Today we're going to just do a couple gun reviews to tell you about the different Ruger LCPs. The first one that I'm going to be shooting today is just the first edition of the Ruger LCP, and this is the one I typically carry. It's my gun of choice. Then I'm also going to be shooting the new and improved Ruger and give my opinions about which one of these I prefer and whether you should get the new version or stick with their first version they had. And then I'm also going to shoot the original Ruger LCP with a different trigger to kind of give you some ideas on if maybe we should stick to the original and just change out the trigger, or some different opinions about how they shoot. So I'm going to start off with my Ruger, the one I carry, and I love it. I chose this one because of the grip. It's just perfect size for my hands. It fits, it's comfortable, and I feel like I have good control over it. So I'm going to shoot 6 rounds out of this one, and then I'll give you some tips and ideas of how I like it. So this one has the double click when you pull the trigger. So when I release, it has 2 clicks at the end, which I've shot this gun for many years, so I'm kind of used to that double click and kind of have grown accustomed to hearing that when I'm done. So I tend to like the trigger. It's very, very long trigger, so when you pull it, it kind of feels like you keep pulling. So that's kind of the bummer with it. It has a little bit of a kick, so you have to definitely have a good grip on it. But other than that, I love this gun for the size and the ease of being able to carry it. So I'm going to show you the second Ruger now. This is the second, or the newest version that they've come out with, and the biggest difference between this one and the first one that I shot was right away you'll notice the texture of it on the grip. Definitely has a lot of texture on it, which helps you when you grab it. It's firm and you can kind of feel that in your hands. And I've shot it before, and when I shoot it, I don't tend to like it. I can almost feel it rubbing on my hand. But I'm going to shoot it today again and just kind of see if maybe the first time I shot it, it was in my head, and now maybe I'll like it. So I'm going to shoot it. This trigger's a little bit different, so I'll talk to you a little bit more about that trigger. The magazine tends to catch a little bit, I've noticed, when I stick it in, so that's one thing that I don't like, and I don't know if it's the gun or if it's just the model, or if it's just me in this gun, but I've had trouble every time I've done it. So I'm going to shoot this one a couple times and then I'll tell you about it. And I had a malfunction right away. Doesn't look like anything's wrong with it. So, and see, that's where it gets stuck, so I have to kind of jam it. Not sure why it does that, but it does every time. So I'll shoot again and see what happens. Now we're loaded, and it should work this time, hopefully. So that one, probably the biggest difference for me is just adjusting to the trigger on this one. When you pull the trigger, Release that magazine. It doesn't have the double click, so it just comes back and then it just goes forward and you don't hear that click. And so part of it's probably just me getting used to that and not hearing that double click. But you can pull the slack out quite a bit on this one. So you have all that room right there that you can let go, and that took some getting used to on shooting this one, but then it clicks pretty quick once you get there. It's a little heavy, but not too bad. On this, I do notice, like on this part right here on the texture, that tends to rub on my hands, and I don't know if it's my grip or the size of my hands, but not a huge fan of that. But as you can see, I didn't shoot it too bad, so it's not a terrible gun choice. It's just probably not my preference over the two. The last one that I'll show is the original. It's the same one as the first LCP that I shot, but this one has a different trigger. And so on the first one I talked about having the double click for the reset, and so on this one it'll be a little different. I'll show it to you before I shoot it, but I'll pull back, and it has a little bit of a heavy trigger, but then I'll let go and it has the double click again. So I'll be used to that sound. So here we go. We'll shoot on this one. I'll go a little bit further down so you can see the difference in them. There we go. My hands are a little cold, so I'm not gripping things very well. And then I'm going to go down the middle. On that one, the trigger tends to be easier to pull back, but then I'm not sure. I'd have to shoot this trigger side by side with that one and kind of compare to see if I like the two. So in summary, on the three different ones that I shot, I'd probably say the biggest difference between the two original or the two first LCPs is this one had quite a bit of slack at the beginning. To pull the trigger to get it to go had a lot of slack, whereas this one just had a little bit of slack before I go. So that would be the difference on those. So if you don't like the long trigger, then maybe just changing that trigger out and getting rid of some of that slack would be a good recommendation. But then this is probably still my favorite, and it's probably just getting used to that reset and knowing that the two clicks are coming. And I also just love this grip. It's smooth right here, and so when I grip it, it's smooth on both sides, and it's just comfortable. It doesn't hurt and rub on my fingers. So I'd say this one's probably still my biggest recommendation if you were going to pick one of the LCPs. And then this one, the trigger, if you're not used to the double click on the reset, then this one, the trigger is definitely a little bit snappier, and so it's going to be a little bit easier to shoot, and there's not that long of a reset or long of a trigger pull. But then the texture for me is an issue, but I would shoot one before you decide on one, just to kind of decide it for yourself. But my overall recommendation would probably be just the first LCP. It's cheaper, and it's reliable, and it doesn't hurt my hands, and overall I would go for a reliable gun that's comfortable and that I feel safe with. So this is probably my pick.
So we've heard from Amanda about the LCP and her opinion, and I have to admit it's a little colder out here than I thought it was going to be here in the shade, so our hands are kind of chilled here. It's hard to get those trigger pulls down exactly. But anyways, I have similar thoughts about Amanda and the LCP, the original 1 version here, and the LCP 2 that we see over there. This is mine. Those who are not familiar with our channel, you can see this has quite a bit of wear on the slide. This is the same LCP that went through the torture test and was treated pretty badly. And a byproduct of that is I had to replace a couple parts, and I went ahead and replaced the trigger on it. We'll put a link down in the description on where this trigger is actually from. But basically, it just takes up some of the slack. You don't have to go quite as far versus the stock trigger. It has the same springs in it. I would never recommend you guys change any of the springs up here because you're going to have reliability issues. But just this aluminum trigger right here gives a little more solid feel on the actual trigger brake. and takes out some of that slack, but it's still the same 2 double reset, double click thing that you have to do. But I think it's a nice improvement on the actual gun. Like she said, the biggest difference on this, the texturing, it does have these forward slide serrations here to help you cycle it if you want to, and the trigger definitely is a whole lot shorter. Once you bypass that little safety, that's your slack right there, and then it basically breaks right there, and the reset right there. So it is an improvement. The sights are a little bit improved, a little bit more pronounced. But one thing I've noticed is this slide kind of has a natural curve, looks visually to me, and this might just be me, but when I point the gun and I try to look down the slide kind of like you would a shotgun, nice flat across the top, it tends to make me point the gun like up for some reason. It basically works against me aligning the sights. I don't know why, versus the original LCP design, which is flat across the top. I very naturally point this and align the little bit of sights they have. This might just be me, it might be something with my eye, but for some reason the additional kind of cuts and serrations and stuff on here visually kind of confuses my eye a little bit. I have to work harder to align that front sight, even though it's bigger and more pronounced. I don't think it's that much of an improvement to make it worth it, just for me personally. But let me shoot all 3 of these, and then I'll give you a little more of my thoughts on them. So first off, we got the new LCP II. Like Amanda said, I had trouble sometimes getting the magazine to go in. It seems to be catching on the magazine release. I'm not sure what's different about it, but it does kind of hit that little hiccup there, and you have to push it to make it go. I'm not sure why that is. But anyways. Oh, I also forgot to mention it does open on the last round now, and the slide stop's a little bit bigger. I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing for this kind of gun. I think you're more likely to inadvertently hit it with your thumb than you are to really need it. Let's be honest, you're not doing speed reloads with this little pocket pistol or ankle gun. So I don't know that that's necessarily a needed improvement, but it is there. So let's go ahead and see how she do. Now, one thing I noticed, and I've noticed this before, I fired it a couple other times, it is wider than the original, the LCP I, if you want. And just to clarify for you aficionados out there, this isn't the actual first version. There was a version before this had virtually no sights, but this is the common version that most people know. It is wider, which is great, except it's almost kind of more blocky and squared off here. And for some reason, that kind of makes a pressure point. It almost creates a really pinpoint right on this corner that just drives that into the web of your hand. So even though it's wider, the design of it is putting all the recoil in one little spot in the web of your hand. So it feels like it's more sharp and more snappy for some reason. I don't quite understand it. It's kind of counterintuitive. But the trigger is obviously a lot shorter and better. And the sights, they're fine. I don't think it's that big of an issue with this kind of gun, but let's move on though. And see, once again, that magazine went in a lot easier. No little hiccup or snag in the middle. We'll try a different spot here. Alright, so like I said, and you can see it on the target, I tend to track these sights a little bit better, even though they're slightly smaller on the older version. I'm not sure exactly why. I just do. Obviously the trigger is longer and it feels heavier because it's longer, but I'm used to the gun and it works for me just fine. The recoil felt the same. It didn't feel that much better. And like I said, it is a smaller gun. So, and let's do, I guess it's kind of like the Three Bears. That's too hot, this is too cold, and this is going to be just right. So this is obviously my LCP. So we'll give it a go and see if I can do a little bit better. We'll go right in the middle, I guess. It's about the same. I do like to feel this trigger a little bit better. It is a little nicer, broader, feels a little more solid versus the plastic one, but not a real big difference between the two. Overall, I think you're buying one of these guns because you want to be able to put it in a little pocket holster and put it in your pocket, or put it in a bag in your purse, or a sticky holster like Amanda does, or what I'll do a lot of times is an ankle holster. This gun, put this on your ankle, and it's so light, small, it just disappears. It really doesn't bother you, versus a lot of other guns you strap to your ankle, and by the end of the day you can feel it like you're dragging something around. I think that's what this gun is for. It doesn't have to have great sights, it doesn't have to have a great trigger, but it does need to be reliable. And thus far, mine has been very well, it's performed very well, other than burying it in the dirt, which kind of slowed it down. Overall, I don't think it's worth it. I think go ahead, you can get this, the LCP I, if you will, for about $199. That's retail at most places right now with the new version out. Is it really worth it to step up for at least $50 more to one of these? I don't think so. I really don't. I don't think the improvements are worth the extra money. I don't think the improvements are really necessary for what this pistol was designed to be, which is basically a pocket gun. The added features on it make it bigger, a little more blockier, and I don't think that's what you need with a gun that you want to be as small, smooth, and easy as possible. So just one little tidbit here and teaser. This is going to be the next one up for the review. You guys, if you don't know what this is, I'll give you a hint. The Army just picked a very similar version of this to be their new service pistol. So this is going to be in the works very soon. We asked if you have any feedback, questions, tips, comments, let us know, and we'll see if we can get to it. But other than that, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.